Hey there, connoisseurs. It's Rod with Pow Group. Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ stocks, crypto assets, news, and interviews. Also home to the best MJ community. Today is Thursday. It's August 29th. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, we're going to be discussing, there's been a lot of frustration, so I wanted to come on and do a video that I believe this is a must watch. I'm going to be talking about big tech and how long it took for it to recover off, after the dot-com days, right? And it took over a decade for some of these names. Some names weren't quite a decade, but what can we potentially expect for the MJ industry? A lot of people are getting frustrated. I know it's been a long time coming. If you look at the last 4 years, it's been a brutal 4-year bear market on a lot of names. And then if you even go back on some names in MJ, basically, a lot of the Canadian LPs haven't hit all-time highs since 2018. So I'm not going to use the last 4 years. I'm going to go back to 2018 because what I'm talking about is how long did it take big tech to recover, where the whole industry, right? All of the big tech companies, your Apples, your Amazons, your Microsofts, how long did it take for those companies to get back to all-time highs simultaneously? So that's what we're going to be looking at here today, and I think it'll make it feel a lot better. But before we get to it, make sure to smash the like. It helps support me in the channel. If you're new, you can subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. You'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. As always, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and you should never buy or sell anything based on anything I say or write. This is just entertainment purposes only. Also, just launched members on the channel as well, so shout out to all the new members. I'm going to be doing member-only videos, about 1 to 2 videos per week to start. And you can also follow us over on X, formerly Twitter. Handle for that is @GroupPow. Going to be using that as my platform of choice going forward. And I did hear that X is actually launching a competitor to YouTube. So it's the Everything app in full force. So exciting times. And I posted this video a couple of days ago, and this is what kind of sparked the idea for this video, was a follow-up video to this video here. So the DEA hearing scheduled after elections delaying rescheduling. There was a lot of speculation, and myself included thought that it was going to happen before the elections, but I'm going to do another video on this here in a minute and talk about what are the next steps and how this, I've already said in this video my thoughts and opinions that I didn't think it was the end of the world. I think we're still progressing nicely in terms of the timeline. We're about 10 months ahead of schedule on what could have been. So in my opinion, it's not the end of the world. And this definitely, and I said in this video, it might prevent it from coming back to bite us in the what later on, right? So going through that due process. But expect a video on that after. But again, after this, a lot of people were getting frustrated. I still think we're going to see some high price appreciation into the fall in terms of the technicals. The charts are looking primed and ready to go into the fall. And like I said, the broader stock market's looking really good too. So all the stars are aligning. And I think that a lot of people are starting to capitulate and think it's over, but not me. I think we're still going to see some price appreciation into the fall. I do think that Florida is going, there's some new data out as well that about 57% that were under a new poll are in favor of, and about I think it was close to like 10% are undecided as well. So it should be enough to get it over the finish line. If you haven't seen this video as well with 3D Capital CEO Sheldon Inwintosh, we discussed MJ, biotech, AI, blockchain, more. And I mentioned in this video that it took big tech over a decade on average, about a decade on average, to recover to set new all-time highs after the dot-com boom and bust. So if we bring up Microsoft, this is probably the best example. So Microsoft hit an all-time high, and that was in 1999. And then in 2000, that's when the bubble burst and we saw, a pretty sizable correction, which we'll look at in just a second. But if you go from 1999 to the high, and how long did it take and when did it hit a new all-time high? It hit a new all-time high in 2016. So it actually didn't do it for 17 candles. This is the 12-month period. So every candle represents 12 months. So 1 year. So it took 17 candles, 17 years for it to hit a new all-time high. And from the high there, we hit 59.97 and we pulled back about 75%, right? A lot of names in MJ have pulled back around 70 to 80%. And I know what people are going to say, why are you comparing this? It's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. It doesn't even make sense. Well, what you have to remember is this happened to Microsoft, right, in a new burgeoning emerging market, and they weren't selling Schedule 1 illegal drugs at the federal level in the US. So if it can happen to them, it can most certainly happen to MJ, right? So it's just tracking price movement and adoptions. It's not comparing, market caps or the opportunity in terms of global addressable market, right? It's just comparing percentage drawdown versus percentage gain. We're not going to see MJ at, $2 trillion valuations. These companies, probably not, right? Maybe a few hundred billion or something, in 5, 10, 20 years from now. But if we just take a look at how long that took, right? That was for Microsoft. Okay, so let's bring up Amazon. How long did it take Amazon from 1999, which was the high there at 565, and then the low in 2001? So it took about a plunge of around 95%, right? And how long did it take for Amazon to hit a new all-time high? It took about a decade, so 10 years. Okay, Apple was a bit of an outlier, so we'll bring up AAPL. So in 2000 is when Apple topped out at $1.34. There's been some splits, right? So it pulled back 82%. So how long did it take Apple to hit a new all-time high? Only 5 years. So if we average that out, it's around a decade, right? Before all of these big tech names started hitting new all-time highs. Then we'll bring up CGC. So CGC is one of the OGs in the space. That's why I'm using it. I'm not saying it's going to be the next Apple or the next Amazon or the next Microsoft. I'm just using it because it's one of the OGs in the space. And if we go back to the highs of 2018, right, the top of that boom and bust cycle, it's not comparing two industries, two companies. It's just the boom and bust cycles, right, and the percentage drawdown. So we actually dropped about 99%, right? But this is a different industry. It's Schedule 1 and federally illegal in the U.S., right? So we're just, and pretty much around the world, we're seeing Germany, Canada, right? All these different countries around the world start to show some reform. But, at the end of the day, in this video as well, I mentioned that Apple almost went bankrupt in 1997 if it wasn't for Microsoft saving them with a $150 million investment. And Sheldon actually met Warren Buffett. He was actually asked to be a shark on Shark Tank, and he grew a company to over $1 billion, and grew at 150x. And I told him that same thing. Apple almost went bankrupt. So if it can happen to a company like Apple, well, then we're obviously going to have our trials and tribulations in the MJ space, especially when it's federally illegal. And some countries are offering the death penalty just for simple possession over a certain amount, right? So you have to think, okay, how long has it been? And I'm not using the last 4 years. Yes, we almost come close to an all-time high, and there were some companies that hit all-time highs, but I'm talking about the whole sector. So how long did it take for the whole sector? And we can even use like an ETF, right? You can go use HMMJ. Maybe that's a better example. So how long has it been since HMMJ hit a new all-time high? Well, that was 2018. So how long has it been now? We'll go out to 2024, and we pulled back about, now over 90%. So it has now been 6 years. So if the average was around 10 years for the tech space, might we be pretty darn close, right? And remember, it didn't take it, 10 years on average, like a decade, to get back to start to recover. It took 10 years for it to hit a new all-time high. So that means that HMMJ, if we're on 6 years now with no new all-time highs, how much longer is it really going to be before we start to see a recovery? And then the question is going to be, when do we hit new all-time highs across the whole sector, right? Like throwing a dart and everything's hitting new all-time highs, just like the dot-com days when the real, everybody and their dog had dot-com at the end, but the real winners and losers were separated after that boom and bust cycle. And the same thing's happening now. We're weeding out, no pun intended, all of the, you can say bad actors. Maybe there's some bad actors, but just the winners and the losers. And I would think over the next few years, we're going to start to recover, right? That means there's going to be a lot of opportunity, in my opinion, not financial advice, not telling you to buy, sell, or hold, but in my opinion, over the next 2 to 3, call it 4 years, we should get back up to all-time highs. And then, maybe in some time in 2027 to 2029, then we see the whole sector hitting new all-time highs and HMMJ hitting new all-time highs. So if we bring us to 2028, that'd be about 10 years. And if we go to 2029, that's about 11 years, right? So, in my opinion, that makes a whole lot of sense as well. We could potentially see rescheduling in the U.S. come next year. I think that's pretty much a done deal. And like I said, it's a pretty good idea that they're going through this hearing because it makes it, to quote Pablo Zwanek from Zwanek and Associates, he basically agreed with me in this video. I said, it's kind of going through the due process and it won't come back to bite us in the what. And he said recently that, he believes that it's going to bulletproof this process even more. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's chugging along nicely. And like I mentioned in this video, we were expecting potentially 18 to 20 months to just get to the hearing, and it's going to happen in like 8 months. So we're like 10 months or so ahead of schedule, almost a whole year on what could have potentially been the roadmap and timeline. So I think over the next few years, that makes a lot of sense. I think that we could see the U.S. legalize at the federal level in the next 3 to 4 years. And wouldn't that put us around that 10-year on average to put us to new all-time highs across the whole sector? That would make a lot of sense. But like I said, it's going to take a while before we get back up to even test all-time highs, and that's probably going to take a few of these yearly candles, right? So again, I think that, over the next year or so, we should start the yearly bounce, and then we should start to come back up to all-time highs over the next few years. And then over the next, 3 to 5 years, we should be in new all-time high territory across the sector. And I do think that that would more than likely coincide with some sort of federal legalization in the U.S. and around the world, call it the U.K., European Union, right? So all of these European nations, the U.S., we're starting to see reform across both of these markets, so and these geographies. So I think that we're a lot closer than we think. So let me know your thoughts and opinions. Again, I'm not trying to compare the valuations of these companies. I'm not trying to compare the addressable market and where we're going in terms of market cap. I'm just trying to compare the boom and bust cycles and what we can expect. And at the end of the day, we don't have that much of a wait left. Even if we have to wait 2, 3, 5 years, just remember how long ago, how short of a time ago, it doesn't seem that long ago that we were just talking about the last elections, right? And here we are talking about the next U.S. elections. So, in a blink of an eye, we're going to be talking about the next U.S. elections in another, 3 years. And it's going to go by, like I said, like a blink of an eye. And if we have to wait another 3 years, 5 years, so be it. This is going to create generational wealth, in my opinion. And those that stick through the bear market and those that stick to this industry are going to be rewarded handsomely. So that's just my own thoughts and opinions. Let me know if you agree with me, disagree with me. Always love hearing from you. We'll continue the conversation in the comment section below. Thanks again for joining us in the Pursuit of Wealth. It's Rod with the Power Group, and we'll talk to you again soon.